Welcome back, everybody, to the Weekly Intention with Michael Mulder. I know it's been a few weeks since I've brought you one of these, and the reason behind that is it's my goal to only bring you exceptional people who have great stories. So these people aren't walking around everywhere. They're tough to find, but we found a good one today. This guy has a crazy story. He's going to inspire you guys. He's going to motivate you guys. And from never having met his father, dealing with his mom passing away as a young adult, dealing with substance abuse, to opening one of the first CrossFit gyms in the Valley, to becoming a life coach, to now running the Crucible, which is essentially helping men transform their lives and become better people. He's really proof that you can become and overcome anything. So welcome, Luke Kayyem.
That was really good.
Yeah, you like that? I've had some practice. I've had a little practice. So typically how we start these things, I think what's most interesting about people's past is, everyone deals with trauma. Everyone deals with things that they either overcome or they don't. And the people who overcome those things end up doing exceptional things with their life. And I think that you're no, stranger to that rule. So I think a good place to start this story is to talk about growing up in a household, without a father. I can't imagine what that might have felt like.
It's interesting when you say it like that. Because most people probably have not met their father, right? We know statistics are like 50%. So, it's 1 in 2, maybe 1 in 3.
Really?
It's fairly high in standard day society. And so I start there by saying maybe when I was younger, I felt that this was only happening to me. Mm-hmm. And so now being a grown up and having kids of my own, I realize it doesn't happen to everyone. For some people, my family, the father is involved. I'm here. And so much of what I didn't have growing up, I'm able to now relive's probably a terrible way to explain it, but I'm able to experience wholeheartedly for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so a family dinner, having my son take out the trash, helping him shave his mustache, these things are an absolute joy and privilege for me to be able to experience it now that I am a father. But for most of my life, I was always thinking that it was just me, like I was the only guy. And so I know a lot of people struggle with that. There's something about having a positive male role model in your life. Women are powerful, they're beautiful. Feminine energy is universal, and it is a magical thing. I was raised by 3 women, and we have to tap into that energy as masculines, especially some of us alphas, because it allows us to be very universal and multidimensional, and it allows us to enjoy life a whole lot more than always fighting the masculine, which can be heavy and dark.
I'm very interested in that because my parents, split up when I was 9 years old, which is a tough time for me, just because for me growing up, I always felt like that lack of trust and that lack of love. It became very hard for me to connect with women on that level because I was always reacting from a place of hurt. You can't get close to me because you're going to hurt me. And I didn't even realize that in my subconscious until much later on in life. But I'm just kind of curious to hear, as growing up, you had a great mother, you had that feminine energy. How did that affect your choices?
So I believe that the lack of male masculine energy came out in defiance, and it came out in getting disappointed and getting triggered, not being able to express my emotions. And, having a mom was fantastic. You can't replace a mom, but there's something about, again, safety, security. There's so much of that a man is able to do, and I know there's a lot of single moms out there. Shout out to all my single moms. It's hard. I couldn't imagine. I have a partner, a universal life partner, my wife, my high school sweetheart, and it's still hard. So I can't imagine what my mom was going through. Quick story here. Just got the phone before this podcast, and I was talking about teenagers, my son, defiant, kind of pushing against a lot of resistance. And we were laughing because what we were doing at that age, and not to sound like the old guy in the room,
Yeah.
right? But it's not even close, So I can get upset, especially my son's oldest. And like my brother just said, he's grown up in this world as his norm. And so he can speak the language, and I'm sure he's going to go off to do phenomenal things. But there are days where I question how good of a job I'm doing as a dad. It's a hard job, And so I can see, and this may sound even crazier to some of your viewers or even you, but like I can see how dads run away because they're not equipped with the tools and the mindsets and the skills and shit, man. I spend most of my days biohacking in order to be a better man so that I can be a better father. And most men don't look at life that way. And so I'm blessed to have not had the father that I am today. And that's a Tony Robbins quote. I stole it, but if I had half the father that I wanted, I wouldn't be half the man that I am today.
That's such a crazy perspective, and I'm sure that this perspective you have right now isn't something that you've always had. I'm sure there were some lessons along the way, but I mean, that's exactly true. You think about who you want to become, and a lot of times, I also heard a good quote. I don't know who it's from. It's not Tony Robbins, but they loved you the best that they could. It just wasn't good enough for your standards. So sometimes people will love you as much as they possibly can. It just was never or could never be enough for you. And, call that good or bad. I don't know what you'd call that, but it just kind of is what it is. I really want to dig down this path of like your defiant past, because I agree with you. Nowadays when kids get in trouble, like it's nothing. Like even when I got in trouble as a kid, like I did the occasional stupid thing. I'd go home and I'd get the belt from my dad, and that was even old school. Nowadays I don't hear about kids even getting the belt anymore. I'd get my ass whooped. I would, but then I wouldn't do it again. And I'm thankful for those lessons learned. So let's talk about like your childhood, because I'm going to bring them to, the guy we see here. Like, let's talk about like, the substance abuse. Let's talk about like some of the defiant choices that.
So Steve-O is doing a drug dealing like parody on his Instagram. And so I was thinking the other day, man, we should do that. 101 reasons why Luke Kayyem doesn't drink alcohol anymore. Number one, I won't even go there. Okay. So, back to these stories. I think like most kids, I hit the, uncle's cigarette and the bottle of whiskey or wine that was on the counter. And then, both of my parents my mom was a radical hippie, social worker born in Los Angeles, raised in Hawaii, and we're talking, early 40s. So my mom had me when she was 43, which is extremely old. But it was only parent, single child, and so she really wanted to have a kid. And when you look at, her life prior to that, like she was, at Woodstock, like that was her life. And so my dad was this, Rolling Stone who used to do camera work for Elvis. Wow. And like, I'm 43, so I'm not like, 60 years old, right? Yeah. Like I was a miracle to be born. And so that's definitely something new to say and to think about. And so I'm born 1978, Southern California, Los Angeles, Hawaii, Palm Springs, and everyone's partying. The old people are partying, right? And so I grew up in that environment. And so, my grandma had caretakers, and they showed me how to, smoke pot and drink alcohol. And so, at 14, 15 years old, I was driving my mom's 1963 Mercedes Benz when she'd go to bed at night. And, I grew up really fast because of that. And then you kind of pepper in people close to me dying, my grandma, my great aunt, my uncle. And so now I'm looking at things much differently. I'm kind of living a lifestyle at a really young age. And that's how I spent my teenage years. I had the McLovin ID before McLovin. It said Kayyem on it, and it had a rainbow. And, I got it in Hawaii when I was 14.
One word.
Oh, dude. I mean, when the movie came out, I was like, oh, I've done that before.
I literally just watched that movie less than a month ago.
Yeah, it's a good one. As soon as McLovin, man. One name. Yeah, one name.
One name.
Yeah. So,
what do you seal?
I'm drinking on airplanes at 16. You know what I mean? Like that was the first ID. And then there was a second and then third one. And then I just got used to always being, the 18-year-old who worked at a nightclub or dated, someone older than him. Right. So I grew up super fast. And then I grew up really fast. In 2004, at the age of 24, I lost my mom. And so, that's hard enough, but I found my mom in her home one afternoon, and she had had a stroke, overdose, prescription medications, and alcohol, and she, Prince and Michael'd out. And so I happened to find her, another blessing in disguise that you would never imagine, 2.5 decades later, but it affected me in a very negative way for a long time. And so again, that goes back to now being 24, really having no discipline and being addicted to more, really. We did some crazy stuff, right? Never invest in a nightclub, a timeshare, or a mobile app before mobile apps ever existed. Timing is everything. And so I learned a lot of lessons, and, ultimately I felt that I had been given substance abuse, as you say, but, party in my blood, right?
So even before we go forward from that, do you think, looking back on it now, losing your mom at an age and just kind of losing everybody around you, do you feel like, either drugs or comforting that lifestyle was like the comfort that you never had? Do you feel like the more you dove into that, the less you had to think about the pain of situations that were happening?
Oh, 100%. It's numbing. And so part of my values, my mission is to show up, right? Like my dad didn't show up for me, right? There's a lot of dads out there that are not showing up. And my hopes in this life, it's not a hobby. It's not a passion project. It's not, it's not my work. Like this is my life's purpose, is to empower men who own the title of father to show up and become the best fucking possible version of who they have ever been every day forward. And it sounds great and it's powerful, but really it's a lot of work, right? Mm-hmm. Like to get sober, to stay sober, to go through a process, to realize that there are things in your life you may be addicted to that you don't even know that aren't substances, relationships that we have with food, people, stress, news. Again, that word biohack is really centered in my mission, but it's more than just that, right? We touch on some of the things you're touching on with your viewers right now, which is the emotional side of life and understanding. I mean, I got a book right here, Master Your Emotions, right? Because nobody taught me that, right? So we're not teaching our kids that stuff right now. I mean, my kids are not paying attention to this. They're not diving into my, library to learn. And so we have to lead them by leading ourselves, right? Again, fatherhood is a leadership position. I know your show is not about fatherhood in particular, but you're gonna be a father one day, right? You don't have kids yet.
No kids yet.
Yeah, no kids yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think that none of that stuff is taught in school. I mean, especially when you are growing up and now you have no mom and you find yourself like making these choices. And I feel like there's always like either a coming to Jesus moment or a moment where you know, you either hit rock bottom or you just decide like, I'm not going to continue to make the choices that I am. And I remember for me, it wasn't even bad for me because I always felt like I was never enough. I always had like lack. Like I always wanted to prove to people. Growing up, I was bullied and I was scrawny. So like I joined the military, I started lifting weights and I was like, this is cool. People like me because of this. And then I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I started making a ton of money in sales. And I was like, this is cool. People like me because of this. But I never did it because I truly cared about myself it always came from a place of lack. And I just remember at one point, I just felt, I was never like addicted to anything. It just was like the drinking and the partying on the weekends in Old Town and just like my behaviors in general. I just felt this feeling in my heart, like sick to myself. My buddy invited me to go to church, CCV. They're all over the valley here. And I remember I just like went to that church and I just started like crying, like uncontrollably, just like sobbing. And I just like felt the weight of my decisions and just knowing that like that wasn't who I was as a person. And I needed to make changes if I wanted to get to a place of, you know, true fulfillment within my life. So I guess my question is to you is like, what did you feel or what was that moment for you?
Oh man, you touched a lot right there, man. You know,
this is what I do.
Yeah. You know, the last piece I'll touch back on is spiritual enlightenment is very powerful. And a lot of people use the term awakening and, you know, wake up, and it's different for everybody, right? And so I can understand exactly what you're saying because I'm comfortable with where my spirituality is and how I live, right? And so that wasn't always the case. You know, we go through a process, right? And for me, the beginning was my childhood, and that's how I really look at, you know, the first phase of my education. Education was always big in our family. I have 6 family members that went to University of Southern California. My mom was a psychotherapist, and so again, I'm you know, kind of the meathead athlete that, you know, the old lady had out of wedlock. Like that's how it was in like our bigger family. So one of the questions you asked earlier on the pre-show was about like how to change the legacy piece. And so like my kids will never see the drunk version of me in their lifetime. That's fucking absolutely the most powerful thing that keeps me sober now. You know, and I've gone through progressions or phases to get that, right? For me, it's about continuing to learn because that is my education. And so, you know, I barely got through high school, even though I played multiple sports and dropped out of college out of freshman year and, you know, got right into the fitness business. And so I had to replace, for me, my limiting beliefs of just never going to be great. Like I couldn't achieve greatness because I hadn't went to college or I hadn't gone to USC. And so you talked about that a few minutes ago of never feeling like, you know, worthy, right? For me, it was the judgment of, oh, I can never achieve that. And, you know, I would see guys and I'd be like, man, they're so lucky to be born into that life, right?
Yeah, no, I know how exactly that feels.
Yeah. And then now those guys are like reaching out to me like, hey, dude, I see what you're doing. I see what you've been doing. You know, everybody needs guidance, right? Let's do another Tony Robbins, right? I'm not your guru. So, you know, coaching men is about really showing up in a powerful way to, you know, be open and honest and engage conversation and ask them some pretty heavy questions, right? Have you started doing any coaching yet?
No,
Yeah, that's next for you, bro. That's next in the progression, man. That's it. Yeah.
No, I feel I want to grow this, and it's just been kind of like a thing. Like, you know, you don't know what something is, and then you just take a step, and you take a step forward, and just kind of like walking blindly into the pursuit of what makes you happy, and that's just what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but I like what I'm doing. Hey, if that makes sense.
That's all that matters. Yeah. It's a progression, right?
Yeah.
I said it on the pre-show too. I'm not a content creator who coaches. I'm a coach who creates content. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of coaches, in the game, getting in the game. I'm a lifer, and, I can get all fancy with my title and say what I do and use terms like, biohacking and consciousness, but I'm a coach. And that coach that I am is the coach, man, mentor, positive male role model I always wanted in my own life. And so again, if we're, teaching and sharing values to your listeners, it's like, if you can create a personal I am statement that you write, that you can memorize, that's simple, and you set an intention and you're determined to be that version, no matter what you've ever done or gone through, it's the most powerful statement you can live by. And like you said, one of the reasons why you did these things was to impress others or to, get people to like you, right? In the same sense, we have to break all of those ideas of who we ever have been before, right? Because if we hold on to that, that's part of what the Crucible does, is it gets you to break free from some of these ties that we have to an older model, an older version of ourselves. We replay that story, that negative spiral. And so I'm the epitome of the guy who says, I don't care what you've been through, what you've seen, war, PTSD, addiction, trauma, sedation, addicted to more, right? That we can really positively shift that. But it starts with you.
To get it to be the right kind of more.
Oh, yeah.
And let's say I think this is the most good tie-in, to get to some of the things that you're doing now, like the CrossFit gym and the Crucible. You talked about your family being your why and your kids never seeing you be a drunk, and that's a huge motivator, for you. But what I've learned is that, this development of either, your consciousness or yourself, the person you want to be, it happens in layers. It's not just, one person and it's all right there. For me, is fitness. I figured out that I could work out, and that's something that I could be really, really good at. And the more I was regimented in it, the better I felt in other aspects of my life. What was that thing, for you in the beginning that kind of was the catalyst? And be brutally honest, if there's like a bad moment or like friends that you had to cut off, because a lot of people are struggling with that. A lot of people can't get to the moment that you're talking about to even seek help because they either don't feel worthy to have that help, or their environment is conditioning them to be in a place of shit, honestly.
Yeah. Mine's a series of things. It's death, and then it's life, 2 kids being born, and then it's, one hell of a real estate ride for a few years, and then, sucking it up and going back to fitness and starting over and working as an employee, and then finding CrossFit, and then competing in the sport.
So you did a real estate thing. It's funny. I interviewed somebody about 2 months ago, 2 months ago, and he is co-owner of one of the largest franchise senior care businesses in America. And he had a story that he had like 4 houses and mortgage, and in 2008 he lost literally everything. Was that kind of a situation for you, where you were?
Yeah, no, didn't lose anything. Everyone's in real estate, as I say. If you live and you sleep at night, everyone's in real estate. And so that's a foundation that my grandfather and my mom were big in, especially in Hawaii. So between California and Hawaii, right around that time, I was doing some deals. And you didn't lose, didn't foreclose, didn't short sale. We did it with integrity, and we ended up just shifting into what you see now, which is the Palace, which is crazy because we've been in this home for 12 years. And so prior to this, I had lived in 38 different residences in my life. And so the 39th one, and for my wife, it's like 36, is this house. And so everybody knows, I don't care what state you're watching this from, real estate is short right now. The game is strong, and because of that, inventory is very low. And so we're riding it out, man. That's something that I've really practiced, is killing the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so you saw my primered Toyota Tundra in
matte black, murdered out.
Yeah, I've really learned to enjoy the things I have. Well, first of all, to invest in really good things. I saw you pull up in your Tacoma, right? You drive a Toyota truck. You're a slightly different breed than the dudes who drive Chevys and Dodges. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. You might be sponsored by one of these guys. I've had them all, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah. No, growing up, my dad always had F-150s. I think he's had, since the 90s, he's had every single F-150 that there is to have. Every single time I go home for Christmas, there's a brand new F-150. It's like, this is the 2021. And then he's got the Super Duty one, too. So he'll have the F-150 and the F-250. So I always grew up a Ford guy, but I came down here and I'm like, what do I need a giant truck for? And then I started to research depreciation, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to take a hit on this thing. And then I looked at the Tacoma, and I was like, wow, this is not going to take a hit, like, at all. And it goes forever. So I bought that 2 years ago, and that was my dream to do. I thought about that for like 3 years, buying brand new.
Manifested. I like it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
that was a big manifestation for me.
Yeah, that's good.
So I think the fitness thing is really cool. I didn't tell you this about myself, but I spent about like 4 or 5 years in CrossFit myself. I was up in Fargo, North Dakota, at CrossFit 7.
What's your fastest Fran time?
Fastest Fran time was like 4 or something. It was never
2:40.
It was never that fast.
Yeah. What's your fastest Helen time?
I don't even remember which one Helen is. I remember Jackie.
What's your painful, man.
There's a whole list of them. But I mean, I can relate to that because my confidence was always in lack, and then fitness really helped that for me. My first thing was P90X. I started out in P90X, and I did like the whole summer, and I went from not even be able to do one unassisted pull-up to like 12 like strict by the end of the summer, and I was riding high on myself for that, and then that manifested into CrossFit. So you cut off the drinking, you're done with the real estate, and you kind of get into the fitness thing. I want to dive into you went into the first CrossFit gym in the Valley. That's huge, and I mean that was the peak of CrossFit time.
We were early adopters right here in this house we've been in for 12 years. We had the founders, Greg and Lori Glassman and Dave Castro and all these, juggernauts. And it was cool. It was a community, and it still is. What people don't realize is, and I'm going to keep this one under 3 minutes for sure, is that CrossFit is 3 things. It is a modality, which means it's a training regimen. It is a sport, which means it's competitive. And it's a business, which means it's a brand, it's a gym. And those are 3 completely different universes in the CrossFit world. And so a lot of people are hobbyists and some are athletes. And, for us and our family, it was a business. And we treated it that way. And so we had done a lot of things in assisting the growth, but also really redefining it and doing things like having standards and systems and operations manuals and procedures. What happens when someone joins the gym? What happens when somebody dies at the gym? These are like real life problems.
Happens all the time. Robdo comes to visit.
It happens a lot.
Yep. It does.
And it's really hard to do. And so, we began to look at alternative programming. And that's a key concept, key word I use in my life is, you need to find an alternative program for the program that you're running in that specific area. And so I don't know, where we would be. Everything happens for a reason, but we sold the gym in 2016. My wife went back into commercial real estate, which is where she had built her entire legacy in corporate. And I got lost again, and I stayed sober, stayed strong, stayed fit, stayed coaching, working, but I lost my
your why?
No, I didn't lose my why. I lost like how I defined myself, right? And that was the CrossFit guy. I was the Bill Walsh. You're old enough to know. I was the Bill Walsh of CrossFit in Scottsdale. And I don't say that with an ego because, again, I had to experience that in the fitness world to realize that I was very one-dimensional and that the majority of fitness professionals are that way. No disrespect. I was a knuckle dragging meathead just like you, but you know what? It's time to shift. It's time to grow. It's time to learn more. And that's what I had to do. I had to learn more about life so I could teach more about life.
So you're in a place where, you didn't have a father growing up, lost your mother, were doing a lot of bad things, had found a way in fitness, which is kind of one-dimensional. And, that can take you so far, but it can't take you the whole way. You got to find other things, and that's kind of where you found yourself at when you had entered life coaching, where you just knew you needed more and you wanted to be more.
Yeah, I had a lot of mentors. Again, I've never resisted learning. What I resisted most often was that I was capable of learning what other people were living. And so there was a lot of mentors, like, everybody in the fitness industry. We built our entire reputation on trust, honor, loyalty, respect, community. We had a very trustworthy brand, and we built it on integrity. And so when it was time to get out of that, we had our connections, we had our network. I just didn't have the mission. And so I was lost, taking people on tours and, training them online. Should have invested in Zoom when it was $32 and bought Bitcoin at $350. That's a painful one.
There's a lot of lessons that you can learn in investing. That's too funny. I've got a couple of friends that are pretty good at investing. I'm not good at that's something I need to learn more, and I want to challenge myself to do this year.
Yeah,
is learn to invest. But you talk about your mission and your why, and something I've noticed, with people who want to be better, but don't become better, is they don't believe that they can, so they don't have the confidence, and then they're not granular on their why. Like, they don't have either, like, what call it, like, your value statement, or like even writing things down. Everything for these interviews, I write them down. I write down my goals. Like, for work, I write things down. I put them in the calendar. I make it as tangible and granular as possible, because how are you supposed to do something if you don't know how? You don't even know what it is. How do you want to be more if you don't even know what more is? So what is your mission and why for everybody listening?
Yeah, appreciate the platform and the opportunity to speak to your guests. The mission is called Fathers of the Future. And, we're not only local here in Scottsdale, but we're global. And I have coaching clients around the world. I teach men's high-performance life coaching, specifically with fathers in mind. And I work one-on-one with clients, and then we have this really amazing, intensive training called the Crucible, and that's how we got connected. It's a 2-day training course that challenges you mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, and there's a lot of what we call evolutions and missions. By the way, thank you for your service. I know you're a veteran, and
no problem.
And so I'm a civilian, but I've learned to live a very tactical lifestyle, and along with biohacking and spirituality, right? I do my best to live my best life, and that's what I teach other people, right? The best way to teach is to live. And so that's a big part of this is, going through challenges as a father and as a married man and someone who is, 40 plus, like all of these unique challenges that I face on the daily is what a lot of men are going through. And so my ideal client, my avatar, if you will, is me, where I was just a few years ago, whether it's in corporate or it's in their physical health, or it's in their spirituality or lack of, or it's in their business, their purpose, and what they truly want to do in the world. So we show them, number one, the gaps that they have in their life. We do it in a very tactical way. We expose them to some elements, and we make them intentionally suffer. And it's a real powerful way to kickstart anything. The challenge with most people is, they read a book and it takes them 6 months to get it done, maybe 2 years to apply one tool. We give you about 100 different tools, and along the way, you unpack all the bullshit you've been carrying with those shitty tools that don't work anymore. And by the end of the weekend and the experience, you've transformed into a completely different human being.
That's a lot to take in.
And there's skydiving, active shooting, mixed martial arts, mountain climbing,
ice tanks,
water immersion. You will get buried because we will kill the old version of you. It's the closest thing we have to Roman gladiator training in this state.
That's really cool. And this is actually how I found him. I was scrolling through Instagram and I found this guy online. I was like, I watched this whole video and I started watching more videos on him. I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. He's got high energy, and I could tell he had like used his past trauma to fuel his purpose, which is really, really cool. And
it's real, right?
So, yeah.
And so again, you don't know what's real until you taste it, you touch it, you feel it. And you know, I invite everyone to explore what they're currently doing, and is it working for them? And if it's not 100. It's not the way you want it to be. It's not what you envisioned. Let's go, right? You know, let's make some shifts. Let's take some introspection. Let's begin to educate. You know, there's a stack of books there, and as I'm sitting here talking to you, looking at it, I'm thinking about how that has been my education the past 5 years. You know, I mean, to read with intention, and then to apply, and then to take inventory, and then to hire coaches yourself or mentors to do the work. And so it's so important that we continue to strive to be our absolute best. And when we're not, we don't hold on to it, and we just keep moving forward and do our best the next time.
I love this guy named Andy Frisella. He's founded First Form. I watch a ton of him. I watch a ton of Ed Milet, and I shift back and forth depending on the mood that I'm in. But, you know, part of his big thing is he always talks about winning the day. I don't know if you've ever heard about 75 hard, but every day he's like, I ate 10,000 pounds of Chinese food. Like, so fucking what? Tomorrow I'm going to go and I'm going to win that day. And he said, I woke up, I worked out, I'm doing my business thing. And I think it's so important that we let go of that past version of ourselves. And like you had said, bury that thing, because your past dealings do not disqualify you from future greatness. And once you can realize that, and you can like step into, you know, that feeling, it's extremely powerful and liberating.
Peace.
That's
good.
You like that?
That's good. That's a mic drop, man. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So last thing here, and we'll wrap up because I know we're running out of time here. And this is just kind of ancillary thing. I've watched a lot of your videos, and your high energy. I think that a theme that a lot of people have, and I guess I shouldn't say a lot, every successful person has, is they've got high levels of energy and they maintain that high energy. What do you want to talk to people about, like consciousness and maintaining that level of high energy, and how you've used energy to your benefit to create the Crucible, to create CrossFit, whatever it might be, how you're using energy in your life?
Wow, great timing. I've been writing about peak state and putting yourself in a position of power. And so that's something I've really exposed myself to, is being able to continue to open yourself up to recharging, to resetting, to taking breaks, to doing some of this alternative programming like meditation, mindset, cold breath. And that's been such a huge piece of my development. And so, you know, it starts really with looking at some of the things that you're afraid of and that you fear. And if you can face those fears, if you can, you know, write about them, talk about them, you can expose them, you'll be able to move forward and let go as much of that shit as possible.
I love that. That's a very good point. For sure. And then I didn't let you know this is coming just because I like to have the raw and unfiltered thing. But, you know, I'm all about intentions because the show is called Weekly Intention, and it was born out of setting weekly intentions for my own life. That's where I got the name for it, you know. So based on all of your experiences and everything that you've, you know, accumulated as far as knowledge in the brain, what would you say, whether that's to a father or somebody who's dealing with the situations that you were dealing with? Like, what is one piece of advice that you wish you would have known that you could have told, you know, you at 24 or a father that's struggling to get through right now that just wants to make that move?
Well, it's hard because you're not listening at that time, right? You could have told me, to invest in a Bitcoin and buy, real estate in Maui in 2000, and I wouldn't have given a shit. I would have so you have to be in the right headspace. And that's the biggest challenge. That's why nobody can do it for you. And so it has to come from self, right? We look at these outside sources, myself included, and this is why I want to empower men versus just teach them or coach them. I want them to be able to do everything that I know how to do. And so that person goes on into life with all of these tools, and they're not just, exposed to that one gap that they have. They can keep working on it. So, for me,
it's a tough one. It throws everybody for a loop. It's not just you. I've done artists, I've done business owners, I've done cancer survivors, and it's always something different. So
yeah, so I would tell myself that you're not alone, that you're going to go through some rough patches, but if you just understand that you can do it, and believe in yourself above everyone else. And that's also a hard thing because I say that now, but so many people believed in me along the way, including my mom, and that looking back now, I can't say I did this on my own. I didn't, right? There's a lot of supporting people that got me here. So looking back, I would just say, man, you're going to go through it all. Like I wouldn't replace it. I wouldn't take it back. Whatever you're going through right now, that's your story. And that story is powerful and it has purpose. And if you can share it and tell it and be open and vulnerable about it, maybe even on a platform like this, tell your story. If you just help one person, then you're paying it forward. You're living this life with gratitude and appreciation. And once you get that buzz, once you realize, oh, wow, contribution is a huge part to fulfillment, let's go do more of that, then the game changes again. So just keep doing what you're doing, bro.
I've never heard it phrased like that, and I think that there's passion and purpose. So that is great. You guys know the deal. Again, I share this with people so that they can learn life lessons and so that they can get something from this. So make sure that you like, share, subscribe this, spread this with everybody that you can. I'm bringing you guys the best people that I can physically get a hold of, or people that I can even contact at this point. And the cool thing about this show is it progressively gets better over time. 2 months ago, I would have never even have thought to reach out to this guy. So I'm just continually trying to up the bar with the quality of people that I bring to you guys. And I'm really truly thankful for you sharing your story today. Is there anywhere like you want to, I guess, like your platforms that you want to plug? Instagram, Crucible, whatever it might be.
Yeah, Luke Kayyem, Linktree, everywhere else, Luke Kayyem. Yeah, you'll put it in the notes.
I'll put it in the notes.
Yeah.
LukeKeyyem.
Yeah.
I got you, my friend.
Yeah.
This is Michael with The Weekly Intention. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.